How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video here on the Nat Automotive channel. In today's video, I'm going to be continuing on the mini series with building out the ultimate 3D printing enclosure setup in my garage here. In the past video, I assembled the shelf and got the printers moved down here. And in this video, I'm going to be building out part of the enclosure and installing a lot of the accessories that are going to make this thing really awesome. First step is I actually got to take the printers back off the shelves and all of the other stuff I have down below there off the shelves so I can pull the shelf away from the wall so I have access to building out the enclosure walls on the sides, the back, and the other side. I'll show you guys the materials I got and the method I'm going to be using to fix the enclosure walls to the shelving system. So this is the main piece of material board that I'm going to be using to build out the three enclosure walls. This is a 3/16 inch thick like MDF board that's actually pre-coated so that it can actually be a white board on this side and a black board on that side. So it's perfect because I was going to want to paint these to match the white laminate on the shelving. So that's going to take a step out of the process, make it a little bit easier, and I think it'll be kind of cool if this is technically a whiteboard material. Could test it out with some markers and use it to like make notes and stuff inside the enclosure. So I'm going to be using that to kind of panel off the walls here, and then this Douglas fir 2x6 that I got from Home Depot I'm going to be using as like my extension, because I got to extend the back wall of the enclosure off of the shelf a little bit so that, as I said in the first video, when the build plates are at maximum and minimum Y on both printers, we don't want the cable here of this printer to ram into the back of the wall. So we've got to give the printers a little bit more room to be able to travel to maximum and minimum Y. So I'm going to be cutting two pieces of this to section to match with the top shelf length here, or height. And then I'm going to be painting that white and black depending on the side that it's going to be facing, and then we'll use that to mount the paneling to on the back, and then we'll mount the panels on the sides directly to the shelving rack. Safety first. Okay, so I got the two boards that are the extension pieces for the back wall painted, and they're drying in the white. So once that dries enough, I'm gonna flip them and paint the other sides black. Okay, so while those pieces are drying, I'm gonna work on the side panels. And so the pieces that I bought, they were all a standard size. They're 2 feet by 4 feet. That's a pretty standard size for MDF and plywood boards. So what I have to do is cut a foot off of the bottom of these, because I only need from bottom to top, I only need 3 feet. The width is perfect, so I just gotta for two of these panels cut a foot off the bottom, and then I'm gonna temporarily fixture them up with some clamps, and then we'll start drilling the holes to mount them to the frame rails. Ooh, this is looking good. I'm so stoked with how this is turning out. So I got first side panel mounted up with 6 bolts. I gotta literally just do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so the side panels are all cut and mounted permanently. They turned out great. Got 6 bolts holding each one in. Fitment was really nice, and it pretty much matches the laminate on the shelving unit, so that's pretty cool. So now the next step is the panels out there are still drying from the spray paint, so I'm going to work on the back paneling here in preparation to mounting it to the 2x6s that are going to space it off the back. Okay, so the first step for the back panels here is I actually have to cut one of the panels, there's two right there, one of them in half long ways so that we can have a total of 3 feet of height, because the top to bottom height, as I said earlier, is 3 feet. So I got to cut one of those perfectly in half long ways, and then I'm going to be using these galvanized Simpson brackets to actually hold them together. There's 3 of them, so I'm going to evenly space them out. So you won't even see those because those are going to be on the back side, and so you'll just see the bolt heads coming through. So that'll look really nice, and hopefully that'll give us enough time for the 2x6s that I painted to dry, and then we can mount those on the back. Okay, so I've got the Simpson brackets all laid out, spaced evenly and between the 2 panels. So you can see here, this is the 1 foot panel, and then this is the stock off the shelf 2 foot panel. So now I'm just going to use my Silver Sharpie and just mark all the dots, and then I'll draw out all the holes and start assembling these guys. Okay, so I got the back panel all assembled and ready to go. So you can see how clean that looks on the front there with the bolt pattern and everything. And you can just see the tips of the bolts and the nuts showing. And then on the back side, you can see the actual Simpson bracket with the bolts and everything. And this side you won't obviously see because it'll be backed up against the wall. So now I'm just waiting for the 2x6s to completely dry. They're still a little tacky, so I have them sitting out in the sun right there. So hopefully they'll dry soon, and then I can mount those to the frame first, and then mount the backboard to the 2x6s. Okay, so I actually decided while I'm waiting for those boards to dry, I'm going to install the first of many accessories that are going to go on the inside of the enclosure here. And the first one is a really important one for usability and functionality. It's a set of LED strip lights. Now, this set is actually intended to be used for like under cabinet lighting in your kitchen to add a nice effect, but I figured it would also work perfectly for lighting up the inside of the main part of my enclosure here. Got it off Amazon for about 60 bucks. Comes with a set of 6 LED strip lights, and it has all the wiring and mounting you need to mount it to the inside of either or underneath your cabinet. So I'm gonna mount these lights in a organized and measured pattern here. There's 6, so I'll probably do 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and so on and so forth. And then we'll get them all wired up and plugged in. And I will put a link for everything that I am purchasing to build this enclosure in the description below. So if you're looking at building the same type of enclosure for your home 3D printing setup. Okay, so 15 painstaking minutes later of measuring and marking all the places I want to attach the lights. I also made an oopsie thinking I had 9 lights, but I really only had 6. So I have 3 rows of lights, and then there'll be 2 lights per row, and it'll be above each printer. And then what I'm going to do is use these little plastic clips that came in the kit, and I'm going to screw them into the points where I marked, which will be nice because I didn't really want to use double-sided tape to mount these lights, because if for whatever reason the double-sided tape failed and the printer was running, that would probably not end well. So these will hopefully be a little bit more secure. So now I'm going to just screw each one in to all the points that I marked for the lights. Okay, brackets are all mounted. Now it's time to put the lights up. Also, don't forget how helpful pilot holes are. Alright, lights are mounted. Now it's time to get them all wired together and clean up the wiring. Thankfully the kit comes with these little cable ties that you can also mount with a screw to a piece of wood. So I'm going to be using those to clean up the cabling once I get them all plugged in together so it looks nice and clean. Okay, so all of the wiring is cleaned up and all of the little cable tie straps are mounted in all the different places. I'm really happy that they provided all of the brackets and that the brackets can also be mounted using screws. So that's really nice. They just seem a lot more stable than relying on double-sided tape for everything. So let's go ahead and fire up the lights here. It comes with a little dimmer switch and see what it looks like. Oh, that is so cool. That is going to look awesome with the printers in there. I am so happy with how that turned out. It's a very clean look. I like the fact that it has a dimmer switch so that I can put them on some mood lighting for my printers while they're working away, but it really is going to bring this piece to a whole new level, especially once I get the backboard on and it kind of fully encloses it all together. So that is a definite must-have for an enclosure system if you want to be able to have your printers and work on them and be able to see. A good lighting system is clutch, and this system was $60 on Amazon. The link for it will be in the description below. So I can only imagine I might get a set of these for my cabinets too, because they look great, so they'd probably look great in the kitchen. So I think the next step is, now the wood planks are dry, so let's go ahead and get those situated so we can mount the backboard. Alrighty, so I got the two 2x6 extension pieces mounted to the shelving rails. I didn't film it just because it was a little difficult trying to do this with one set of hands, but you can see I've got them mounted vertically on the back part of the shelving rails there, and I use these kind of like cabinet fasteners with a really wide head so that the screw wouldn't pass through the like oblong holes here used to mount the shelves in this racking system here. So that was a great way to mount them. It's a little tricky because I had to get the drill basically right up against this panel here, but I got them all mounted. They're definitely not going anywhere. So you can see I painted this side of the 2x6 white to go with obviously the white theme in here, and then I painted this side of the 2x6 black. Wow, you can't even see the difference on camera, so that it just kind of blends in. So now what I'm going to be doing is mounting this rear panel here to the back of those 2x6s, and you can see that that extends the back of the enclosure that much farther. The only thing I was looking at that I didn't think of now is I probably am going to have to get some type of 2x6 to go underneath here, otherwise we'll have a large gap on the bottom and on the top as well. So I'll have to do that probably sometime in the next few days here. But it's definitely coming together. The lights just make it look so awesome, but it'll really come together once I get this back panel on. Alrighty, so the back panel is mounted. It was a little tricky balancing it at the same time, making sure it was level and then screwing it all in, but I've got it mounted and it looks awesome. Now the enclosure is almost fully enclosed. There's just a few pieces here I'll talk about in a second, but again, I use these GRK fasteners. They're really designed for like cabinets, which the board here is kind of like a thin MDF board, so those type of screws are great for not splitting, stuff like that, and they went in pretty easily. So it's really coming together now, and I'm really loving how this looks. It almost has like a laboratory vibe to it, which is really what I'm going for. Just we want an enclosed, consistent printing environment. So I'm going to clean up the area a little bit and then talk about what I got to do next. Okay, so last step for building out the walls of the enclosure minus the front, because that's going to take a little extra work that I'll discuss in a second. I'm going to build out a section of piece for the bottom and for the top, because you can see we've got a gap now because we had to build that extension. So I have an extra piece of this kind of flat MDF board that's already painted, so I'm going to use that, measure the thickness on the bottom and the top, and then we'll just screw it in and we'll be good to go. Okay, so fast forward a little bit, you can see I got the printers back into the enclosure space, and in addition I have that top and bottom board installed, so that fully closes out that extension part of the enclosure, so that's fully sealed up and everything. The last part of sealing out the enclosure is this front clear piece, which I have not done yet because I'm still figuring out exactly how I want to do that. So the next steps are I'm going to be installing a few more accessories into the enclosure area. Next accessories that I'll be installing into the enclosure area here are related to the filament spool holders. Now, if you're not familiar, many of the CR10 printers have the filament spool holder mounted to the main computer and controller box. Unfortunately, with this setup here, because we don't have a ton of space side to side, we're just enough basically. I can't have the filament spool mounted to this box because the box would have to be placed farther over for it to feed nicely into the runout sensor right there. And then the other thing is so some printers, like this one here, comes with the filament spool holder mounted to the top of the frame. Now there are some drawbacks to this that people have talked about in other videos, but basically what the drawback of this you know, can really come into play when you're printing taller prints. You have a basically 1 kilogram weight at the very top of your printer, so if your printer is doing fast movements back and forth, and it kind of creates these vibrations, and those vibrations are exacerbated by this weight basically sitting up here, so you can start to get little wavy lines in your print, especially if it's a taller print. So to avoid that, instead of mounting this spool holder to the top of this guy, because that was one thing I was going to do, is I'm actually going to mount these spool holders to the top of the enclosure roof here basically. So, just like this. So that'll allow me to take the weight of the spool, when it's a full 1 kilogram spool, off of the printer, and then also have it so that it can feed directly down and into the runout sensors for both printers, so that they both have ample space. Okay, so I got the 2 filament spool holders mounted to the ceiling of the enclosure. I promise they're equal and mounted symmetrically. It's just this printer is actually slightly taller than this printer, so it looks a little bit off if you look at it from that point of view. But this will be great. This will allow me to take the weight off of the frame of the printers and also be able to squeeze them a little closer together. The only thing that I might have to print in the future here is they have a bracket that you can print and then attach onto here, and it's actually kind of a guide to help the filament come in parallel to the filament runout sensor, so it doesn't start eating into the runout sensor box there. So I probably will have to do that in the future, but it's an easy mod to do. So the last step is I'm going to mount a little thermometer and humidity gauge to each side of the wall. Okay, so the last thing I'll be installing in this portion of the enclosure build are these little temperature and humidity readers. They're little Govee readers that I got off Amazon, so they connect up to your phone via Bluetooth. Actually, they're called hygrometers. They're not hydrometers with a D. I found that out in a recent video when I was looking or researching about hygroscopic filaments. I thought it was hydroscopic filaments because it has to do with water, but it's actually with a G. So I got these little guys. I think they're like 20 bucks on Amazon. So I've got one for this side and one for this side. I'm just going to be mounting them with some double-sided tape here up onto the wall of the enclosure, or probably put it maybe closer to the middle, just so it's a little more accurate. And then you can see here, this is the app that it connects up with, and it gives me live temperature and humidity readouts. So you can see I've got one labeled for the CR10 V2, so obviously this one here on the right, and then the CR10S Pro V2 on the left here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the provided double-sided tape that they provide with the kit, and I'll get those mounted up. Okay, so the little hygrometers are mounted on either side of the enclosure, so this will be a great way to keep track of some quantitative data regarding temperature and humidity inside the enclosure to help troubleshoot any problem with prints, or just make sure that the enclosure is dry enough and warm enough. Okay, so I feel this is a pretty good stopping point for video number 2 of my 3D printer enclosure build. I feel like we've accomplished quite a bit of progress in this video. To start, we built out the enclosure walls, or at least 3 out of the 4, so the 2 side walls, and then we built that extension piece to allow the printers to fully actuate to the maximum and minimum Y-axis positions. We mounted the lights, which is a very cool add-on. I think that makes it look so professional, and I also mounted the light switch, so it's easy to turn the lights on and off to the printers. We've got the filament spool holders mounted to the ceiling of the enclosure, and then we've got the hygrometers mounted to either side of the enclosure as well. So basically, in the last video of this series, it's going to be a 3-part series, I'm going to install the ventilation system, which I'm figuring out exactly which parts I want to order, and then I'm also, the main reason why I'm splitting it up into a 3rd video is I need to figure out exactly how I want to do the front of the enclosure. I basically ran into a little brain fart that when the Corvette is parked in the garage, I can't open any swing style doors like a two-door system, like two pieces of acrylic on some hinges. So I've got to figure out some type of roll-up system with some type of like flexible vinyl clear plastic window, or something that's like on sliders maybe. So if you guys have any comments or ideas how I can build out the front of the enclosure with some type of clear plastic so that I can still see into the enclosure while things are printing, but also still allows me to open it up to get into the printers while the car is parked in the garage right here, I would greatly appreciate your feedback. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. You learned a little bit of something about building an enclosure for your printers. This is basically the perfect size enclosure for two CR10 sized level printers. So if you guys have any comments or questions about the enclosure build, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer them. I'm so excited to get 3D printing more involved and integrated into the channel. I've just got so many awesome ideas in the pipeline that I'm excited to share with you all. So thanks again guys so much for watching, and other than that, I will see you in the next one.